Good evening and welcome to Just the News. I'm Faye. We're going to get straight to it because we have two massive international stories to work through. One, of course, is an update of what's happening in Afghanistan. But before we get there are many countries across the world right now who are now beginning to administer booster doses to their citizens, which means a third dose of the vaccine, because they believe the immunity is waning after a few months after the second dose. And that's causing some debate in the WHO and the United Nations. We're going to get through that. So we'll start right now with the COVID booster doses and what's going on in the rest of the world. The United States authorities warned on Wednesday that COVID vaccination efficacy is decreasing with time. They have now authorized booster dose shots for all Americans from the 20th of September. Public health and medical experts of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, in a statement, have said, and I quote, "The available data makes it very clear that protection against the infection, coronavirus, begins to decrease over time following the initial doses of the vaccination. And in association with the dominance of the Delta variant, we're starting to see evidence of reduced protection against mild and moderate disease. We conclude that a booster shot will be needed to maximize vaccine-induced protection and prolong its durability." In the UK, Health Secretary Shahid Javid has said the COVID booster scheme will take place likely next month. He's not sure about the exact start of the booster scheme because the government is waiting on a joint committee on vaccination and immunization for final advice before proceeding. Israel's health minister yesterday said Israelis are over the age of 40 and will now be able to receive COVID vaccine booster shots as of this weekend. Similarly, France, Germany and the UAE are also rolling out third doses for immunocompromised individuals. According to the Gulf business, Abu Dhabi has made Pfizer and Sinopharm booster shots available to its citizens as well. President Joe Biden and his wife, in the meantime, will get their booster shots in December. The president told ABC's Good Morning America that it is past time for him to get a booster shot. U.S. health officials have made it very clear that booster shots are necessary. The chief scientist of the WHO, and this is the alternate point of view, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, has warned of an even more dire situation of the worldwide pandemic if high-income countries start administering these booster shots ahead of poorer countries who haven't received their first shot yet. She said, and I quote, "We believe clearly that the data does not indicate that booster shots are needed." WHO officials have repeatedly expressed concerns that variants will continue to crop up in areas where the virus is going unchecked and called for vaccine equity and solidarity among all countries. So basically, there is a concern here that if the rich countries who've managed already to vaccinate large populations start handing out a third shot, while most of Africa hasn't received their first shot yet, then it's likely we will have more variants develop in poorer countries, which will make vaccination again a problem because they will learn to beat the vaccination. Africa director of the WHO yesterday said rich countries' decisions to roll out COVID booster shots while so many people around Africa remain unvaccinated threatens the promise of a brighter tomorrow for the continent. He also warned that as some rich countries hoard vaccines, they make a mockery of vaccine equity. Matshidiso Moeti and other African officials, including the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, have warned against booster shots in recent weeks as less than 2% of the population of the African continent of 1.3 billion people are fully vaccinated against COVID. So that debate right now raging on in India. The government has not confirmed anything about a third dose. We're still working our way through vaccinating our population. Remember, we are at less than 5% right now of our total population being fully vaccinated. Let's move on now to updates coming in from Afghanistan. A NATO official today said that there are 18,000 people who have been evacuated from Kabul airport since the Taliban took over on Sunday. According to Reuters, thousands of people, though, are still trying to flee the country. The Taliban urged unity ahead of today's Friday prayers, which is the first Friday since they seized power, calling on the imams to persuade people not to leave Afghanistan. Chaotic scenes at the airport, protests and reports of violence continue. The United Nations Refugee Agency today said that most Afghans are unable to leave their homeland and those in danger have no clear way out. It said, and I quote, "The vast majority of Afghans are not able to leave the country through regular channels." According to Reuters, at least 12 people have died in and around Kabul airport since the Taliban took over on Sunday. The Biden administration has suspended all arms sales to the government of Afghanistan. ABC News has reported that a notice has been now posted to defense contractors. The State Department Political Affairs Bureau has said pending and undelivered arms transfers to Afghanistan have been put under review. This might be too little too late because, as we know, America did arm the entire Afghan army. And a lot of the arms and ammunition and hardware that they handed over to the Afghan army has been now abandoned and given to the Taliban. So the Humvees, the drones, the guns, everything that was given to the Afghan army is now in the hands of the Taliban already. US President Joe Biden, in an interview to ABC News, said the Taliban must decide whether it wants to be recognized by the international community. When asked if he thought the Taliban had changed, Biden said no. He said, and I quote, "I think they're going through some sort of existential crisis about do they want to be recognized by the international community as being a legitimate government. I'm not sure they do," end quote. According to ANI, the Taliban ordered the release of all political detainees from all prisons in Afghanistan. ANI has quoted Russian state media, Sputnik, which has in turn quoted the Taliban spokesperson that said the provincial governors will unconditionally release all political prisoners, low and high ranks from the country's prison and hand them over to their families on the 20th of August. The UN Food Programme has warned that combined effects of war and drought linked with global warming will put 1/3 of Afghanistan's entire population, 14 million people, at risk of severe or acute hunger. 2021 is an extraordinarily difficult year for Afghanistan. The UN, the World Food Programme representative and country director Mary Ellen told AFP News in a telephonic interview from Kabul. An update now on COVID from India, India's COVID situation. India reported 36,571 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. We've stayed at this number so far, so that's positive. Kerala has reported 20,224 cases and 99 deaths in the last 24 hours. There's one piece of good news though. Our recovery rate has now gone up to 97.54%, which means that even if people are getting COVID, most of them, 97.5% of them, are recovering completely. The country is now at a positivity rate of 1.94%, which is excellent because it's been below 3% now for 25 days, which means of all the people who are getting tested, less than 2% are testing positive. According to PTI, and this is news that has just come in, Zydus Cadila's COVID vaccine, Zy-COVID-D, has gotten an approval for emergency use authorization from the Drugs Controller General of India. This is an Indian, indigenously developed DNA-based vaccine against COVID-19. This vaccine apparently will be administered to children above the age of 12 years and all adults. So this is the first vaccine we are actually getting for children in our country that's received emergency use authorization. We'll bring you more information about that as we have it. According to PTI as well, in an RTI query, the government has said 3.86 crore people have not gotten their second doses on time or within that stipulated period of time. The number of people who did not get their second dose of Covishield was 3.4 crore people, and over 46,000 people did not get the second dose of Covaxin within time. And this is interesting because the government widened the gap between the two doses of Covishield, and we've just had Cyrus Poonawalla, who is Adar Poonawalla's father and the chairperson of Serum Institute of India, who said that the gap was widened because of a shortage of vaccines and not because it was recommended by doctors. On to news now from the world of business and the economy. The Union Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister, Hardeep Singh Puri, has said the government is sensitive towards the increased prices of petroleum products. But mostly in his statement, he blamed the previous Congress government. He went on to say that if state governments want, they can lower the price of petrol and diesel and they should do it. In a press conference, he said, and I quote, "We are sensitive towards it and are taking possible steps like doing blending of 10%, which we are going to raise to 20%. Now, by blending, he means the blending of ethanol fuel into crude oil-based petroleum and diesel, thereby reducing our dependency on the fuel that comes in from overseas. But India is currently blending to the rate of 8.5% on petrol with a target of 20%, but it's going to take a really long time. It brings down our dependency on the global prices of crude, but that hasn't in any way brought down the prices at all. Now, Mr. Puri, who is the minister, also said, and I quote, the Congress government in 2010 deregulated the prices of petrol and diesel, meaning there would be a local impact on international rates. The centre imposes an excise on petrol and diesel. State imposes VAT. We use excise money to fund schemes. Now, this is a very vague statement to make because we know that the price of fuel, if it were to simply mirror what is happening overseas, petrol would be about 40 rupees, all inclusive in India. Diesel should be even less than that, or maybe around 35 rupees or 40 rupees. Everything from 40 rupees to nearly 100 rupees is taxed by centre and state. So the fact that he says that we're using this money to fund schemes is a little vague because we don't have any clarity on what these schemes are and why this money is being used. Puri also said that the Congress government before 2014 issued oil bonds of 1.34 lakh crore rupees to control the prices of petrol and passed on the problem to this government. He's right about that. He said that the Congress figures on oil bonds presented, but they were flawed, and challenged the party to ask states ruled by it to reduce the tax on petrol and diesel. Now, it is true that this government has inherited oil bonds or oil loans worth 1.34 lakh crore. But in the last financial year, in just one financial year, this government has also collected 3.4 lakh crore rupees in tax on petrol and diesel in just 1 year. That's 3 times what is owed on these oil bonds. They could have paid off this bond 3 times over. So it can't simply be the only problem that they're facing. News now coming in from around the world. According to Reuters, the World Health Organization has expressed concerns about new kinds of outbreaks in West Africa, along with the surge in COVID cases. On Saturday, the Ivory Coast declared its first case of Ebola since 1994. Authorities say it was an isolated case of an 18-year-old girl who traveled in from neighboring Guinea. Last week, health authorities in Guinea confirmed 1 death from Marburg, which is similar to Ebola. In the meantime, WHO data indicates that West Africa reported the highest number of COVID deaths in the last few months, highest since the pandemic began. According to Reuters, the Ivory Coast in Africa has identified an outbreak of the highly pathogenic H5N1 avian flu near the commercial capital of Abidjan. Now, H5N1 is a type of flu that's contracted from contact to sick birds, but it can move from person to person. The birds have been culled in the vicinity of that outbreak in the Ivory Coast. However, authorities have not declared the whole number. An update from the world of science and technology. The Defense Research Development Organization, or the DRDO, has developed an advanced shaft technology to safeguard the Indian Air Force fighter jets against hostile radar threats. This countermeasure technology can be used by militaries worldwide to protect naval ships, aircraft, and other sensitive targets from radar, radio frequency, and guiding mechanisms from enemy missiles. And a piece of positive news before we leave you for today. An Indian documentary called Mothi Bhag has been shortlisted for the BBC Long Short Film Festival. It's among 110 films from across the world to be selected by an alliance of 13 international film festivals. The documentary, directed by Nirmal Chandra, revolves around an 83-year-old farmer in Uttarakhand who wants to grow the biggest radish that India has ever seen. But his story is really about the rural way of life that's fast disappearing. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening. It is our pleasure to bring you the news day after day. Leave us a suggestion of whatever you'd like to hear, and if there's anything else you'd like us to include in our bulletin, it'll be our pleasure to bring you all of that news. Now remember, stay safe, stay at home. COVID is still around. Wear your mask and have a good weekend. Thank you for watching.